equality fit into intersectionality, and why is this important? You are listening to Gender Equality Over Coffee. I'm Timea.
And I'm Ramon. And we invite organizations and role models that strive for a more inclusive world to answer this question. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Gender Equality Over Coffee. Very good morning to all of you. To those listening, we've got an incredible guest on today. We've got Astrid Wieland. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Perfect.
Welcome.
Welcome. Hi, nice to be here.
How are you today, Astrid?
I'm really good. I said I just had 3 coffees already, so I'm fully prepared for gender equality over coffee.
Check. Great.
Putting the emphasis on over coffee.
Over
coffee. Good one. Well, I'm super happy to have you finally at our podcast. And without giving too much out of the house, so to say, I'll just let you introduce yourself. Tell us, for example, 3 random things about you.
Okay. So maybe something which is quite relatable to in this time. I realized actually last week that 2020 was the first year in this millennium where I didn't sleep abroad at least once, which is crazy. Other than that, I learned 7 languages. So German, English, French, where I also lived for over a year, Spanish at school, Russian at university, Swedish while I stayed in Sweden for some time, and Greek during a school project of self-guided learning, where I randomly chose to study Greek to be able to speak to the people there while being on vacation.
Wow, you chose like some of the most, the hardest.
Yeah, Russian, it's true, but Greek. It's actually really cool because once you understand the alphabet, you can really understand a lot of words because they're relatable to other languages. So even though I'm not good at it at all, especially the last 3, you forget a lot really fast, unfortunately, when it comes to languages. But I think it's just very respectful if you go to another country that you can say at least a couple of sentences in the language that is spoken there. So that's why I was always interested in studying languages.
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
One
already.
One, was that in order of like how well you know the languages?
Yes.
Cool. And 2, what is it this desire to learn language? This is more like a hobby, or do you find it like connects with what you like to do in your work? You know, does it tie into spending nights abroad?
Well, I'm not sure. I always liked studying languages already at school. I absolutely wanted to study Spanish. That's why I switched school to a school where I could learn Spanish. I was in an English-speaking class already at high school where we had a focus on English and French as a business language, which was really cool because we graduated in English and French. So it was really at the mother tongue level where we could speak. And actually today at work, I especially use a lot of English. I'm working at an international company, Microsoft. So our work language, especially in international teams, is English, of course. So there it helps a lot. But the rest, I mean, for example, Russian, I just thought it's something completely different. That's why I wanted to study it, because before that I knew German, English, French, and Spanish, which are those typical languages that you study. So I thought, why not do something completely different? And Swedish I learned because I lived in Sweden for 6 months to do an internship there. And I thought if I already lived there, I should at least speak a little bit of Swedish as well.
That's amazing. Can you share with us what your, like, if you have one, your favorite little language quirk? of any of these languages, or like a word that just, or like an expression that just doesn't exist, say in English or German?
Well, there are actually a lot of funny things in Swedish. There is even a book I bought when I lived there just about random expressions that are not used in any other language. But maybe the word that makes most people laugh is fika in Swedish, which actually means coffee break. So it's very suitable to this podcast, but it could be taken for something else in some other languages, maybe.
Wow. Yeah, it definitely make me do a double take. That's that's awesome. And uh, to segue right into like your background, what what got you? So, is it safe to assume that you're quite the worldly person, the third culture child, as they say? World culture child. No, it's third culture. Sorry, I mix up the terms. What got you interested in getting out there? I take it you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, so I mean, when I was a kid, actually, we always did vacations in Austria because my parents said one should know their own country before like seeking something else abroad. So we went to all the different counties in Austria, and also because we were three kids, so I assume it was not too cheap, yeah, to go abroad. And then when I was 6 years old, so quite young, I was able to visit my uncle and my aunt living in Miami for the first time. So I was 6 when I was flying for the first time, quite a long flight. And I don't know, maybe this did something with me. Since then, I just love traveling abroad. And I think one of the major turning points was when I was 16. We had to do an internship at school, and we could choose where we do it. And my French teacher convinced me to do it in France, whereas a lot of others did it in an English-speaking country, because obviously we spoke better English than French by that time. But I thought, okay, well, I know French since 2 years now. I mean, how hard can it be to go and work in France? So I actually went to a really small town on the Atlantic coast in the middle of nowhere to work in a hotel. And I realized, oh my God, I don't speak French at all. Like, I mean, I didn't understand what they were telling me, what I should do. I don't know if you know that stereotype, but French people are not the best in speaking English either. So it was kind of complicated to get along in the beginning, and to understand even the simplest things, like, I don't know, wash the dishes or things like that. And I was like, what? And then they actually showed me, like, do this, and okay. But it got better, and I think this changed a lot also within me, because I realized that if you just, like, if you're in a situation and you cannot change the situation, because I couldn't, I mean, the only way would have been to cancel the whole internship and go back to Austria. But you somehow get along, you know, like you try to communicate. And I try, like, I mean, there was no internet on the phones, I remember, when I was there. So, and I'm not that old, but I really literally stood there with my dictionary, with my paper dictionary, and tried to understand what they were saying or tried to communicate. So yeah, crazy times.
It is amazing how much we take for granted the technology that allows us to be able to communicate. I remember when I was
Yeah.
traveling in Seoul, I could just be like, I could just, go up to my phone, speak English into it, and it would speak Korean to the person I was trying to talk to. Incredible.
But it's actually really crazy, because I thought about this. I mean, it's not that long ago, like 15 years or so. And I remember that even talking to my parents back home, and as I said, I was 16, so it was the first time, being abroad for a longer time and away from family. And I actually had to, like, we actually agreed on dates where we would go online and meet via MSN back then. So it's so crazy. And now whenever you're abroad, you just take your phone or you're calling via WhatsApp or whatsoever, and it doesn't matter where you are. And back then I actually had to, yeah, make dates with my family to say, okay, we will talk again on Wednesday next week. And then we met online
Amazing.
on Wednesday next week. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're halfway across the world, then it, with time zones, it becomes even harder to try and schedule
Yeah.
something like that spontaneously. That
Yeah.
that's amazing. And how how did that sort of, and you'll forgive the pun, translate into your work? I take it you have an interest in people. You've been at Microsoft for a very long time.
Yes. Well, actually, like most, I guess, I didn't really know what I wanted to do for a living when I was younger. So I just tried to follow my passions and what I always liked to do, which was languages. So first I switched school because I wanted to have a focus on languages where I had to focus on English, French, and Spanish. And then I actually chose, and maybe it's not the wisest, I don't know, but I actually chose my university based on where could I learn the most languages. And I chose IMC Krems because the study was in English, and I could choose two foreign languages that I wanted to study, which was French and Russian back then. So I actually always followed this path, and then during my studies I absolutely wanted to go abroad, but not just for one semester, which was the basic, but I wanted to go for a year. So I had to apply for a double degree study in France, which I was
Wow.
accepted by. So I spent a year in France then, and so on. And then I searched for an internship, and I randomly, I don't know why, I've never been to Sweden before that, but I absolutely wanted to go to Sweden. So when I looked for an internship, again, not sure if this is the best advice, but it worked for me. I actually looked like, what jobs do I find in Sweden that I qualify for at whatever company? Like, really, I didn't care. And by coincidence, I landed at an small but international company, IT company, where I was hired to do marketing and sales. So this was actually my first step into IT without knowing a lot about IT or the products that they were selling. But I just wanted to go to Sweden. So I thought, okay, I was responsible for the German and English speaking markets. I knew German, I knew English. So I thought, perfect. And yeah, then when I went back, and during my master's, I was looking for an internship, and I was really searching for a long time because I wanted to find something valuable, like which will actually help me also later and will also be valuable for other companies. And again, by coincidence, I found an internship at Microsoft, and I thought, well, I already did an internship in an IT company, so why not apply there?
Yeah.
And yeah, now I'm there.
Amazing. Amazing.
I just
What?
want to pick
Yeah.
on one point I noticed after your experience with the Atlantic coast small town um, French encounter, you still went back for a year in France.
Yes. Yes.
Wow, so that didn't scare you. That's that's for sure. Wow.
Well, then I already knew French a bit better, so
Yeah, the hard part was over.
exactly.
Very
Yeah.
impressive. And still, yeah, I suppose this year, or well, the last year where everybody had to stay at home and not travel anymore, was probably a hard hit on everybody who likes to travel and likes to
Mm,
experience cultures.
exactly. But yeah, as you say, I mean, everyone feels the same way. That helps a bit.
Mm. We're all in the same boat.
Exactly.
So, we really, really, really wanted to talk to you on the podcast, also because you are the face, one of the drivers of the new IT girls.
Yes.
So, First of all, happy birthday. I know the community is 2 years old, 10 days ago,
Oh,
uh,
Yeah.
wonderful.
approximately, depends when we air this. So you are for 6 years at Microsoft, which means that you started thinking about such a community while you were there. So tell us a bit, why did you start it in the first place?
Yeah. I mean, I think at Microsoft, we're in a very privileged situation that diversity and inclusion is one of our core values of the company. And it's really felt, like I have to say, especially when talking to other companies, like you realize it even more how privileged you are, because a lot of things that are still discussed in other companies are just normal and expected actually at Microsoft. So I feel very lucky. However, at a lot of events or discussions or meetings also with partners, with clients, I was so many times the only woman at the table or in the room. Like I stopped counting at one point because it was always the same. And I thought, like, how is that possible that, like, where are all the women in IT? And I actually always saw one woman at a lot of companies who was often the only one with me there, which was Doris, my co-founder of the New IT Girls. And at one event, we came to speak, and I said, like, Doris, I mean, aren't there any networks where we could join that connect women in IT? And we actually started looking, but all we found was, on the one hand, very specific networks for women in IT, like, for example, women in coding. And on the other hand, very generic women networks. But we didn't really feel that we would fit in because, for example, I have a business background. I started in marketing at Microsoft, went to product management, and then to sales. So I don't have any deep technical background. And Doris, on the other hand, does a lot in the field of project management. So we thought, okay, well, if there is no network that connects women across all these job titles, then we have to found our own one. And that's why we started the New IT Girls.
And that's how it started. Pretty amazing. I'm a big fan of your work, and the whole brand you created is absolutely, it's great. Absolutely
Thank
great.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, so I kind of identify a little bit with the story. I like, oh, where are all the women? Hello. And wanting to do something about it. I totally understand where you're coming from. And it's great that Microsoft has this environment that fosters basically good practices, I would say. So you coming from a company that has the good practices, building this community gives us the opportunity to maybe exchange what are these good practices and empower each community basically or organization to get better at it, I suppose.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a work in progress. That's also
Yes.
what we say. We publish also our diversity and inclusion report every year since a couple of years now, where like we at Microsoft, where Microsoft really challenges itself, whether it got better the last year or not. And I think already doing that is a huge step, because you keep yourself accountable whether you're actually doing something and whether it actually shows in numbers. And I think, like with digital transformation and so on, it's not something that you do once and then you're done and you can say, okay, now I don't have to do anything anymore. It's the same with gender equality or diversity. I think it's something you have to work on every day, again and again.
And from one volunteer to another, I suppose you're doing this on the side of your full-time job.
Exactly, yeah. So I'm working full-time at Microsoft as a business application specialist,
Yes.
where I'm helping my clients to digitally transform, reevaluate processes, their business processes, and so on. And next to that, in my free time and for free, so we are a voluntary community, I'm the co-founder of the New IT Girls.
It's really amazing because I know what it takes to commit on a longer term to volunteering, and at times, especially if you want to be consistent, it takes some energy. And being with women tech makers being around for 8 years now in Vienna, we've seen actually communities form, storm, perform, and then also kind of unfortunately dissolve, right? So it's totally understandable on one hand, but it's not to underestimate how much your motivation and passion actually means to drive you forward. Absolutely. So
Totally agree. 100%. Yeah.
and having support from Doris, of course, and from all the other great speakers you have, because you have great events, great lineup, and also hopefully us trying to help you in promoting, for example, at least in promotion and supporting you how we can. That's how we can hopefully keep you going, Astrid. So
Definitely,
really,
definitely.
really
And I
great.
mean, what motivates me is really during our meetups, even though they're at the moment, of course, just virtually, but having those discussions with other women, or for example, recently I was at an alumni talk at my old university, and a girl asked like, yeah, but sometimes it feels intimidating to be the only woman when you're in IT. And I told her, like, I totally feel her, you know, because I think we've all been there. And it's not, some days it's easier. Some days I'm also thinking, like, what? And especially when I started, I mean, I remember one meeting where we were going to a client, and I entered the room. It was me from Microsoft, and I was the only woman. I was under 30, and there were only, sorry to say that, but old men in the room, all with a suit and a tie, sitting there staring at me. And I had to tell them how they are going to transform their business, you know. And I was like, what am I doing there? Like, how should they listen to me? I mean, they are in the business since 20, 30 years. And this moment really made me reconsider my value. And I thought, okay, they have 30 years of experience. They are 30 years in this industry. They have seen a lot of things. But what can I bring to the table? And I thought, okay, my strength is that, first of all, I'm much younger than them. So I see digital transformation and also how you interact with technology completely different, because they didn't grow up like that. And I'm a woman, so I can bring in that aspect of maybe things that they have not considered, how they could attract a new target group maybe, or how to they could speak more in a language that also more women will feel attracted, both as clients but also as employees. And I think once you found for yourself the value that you can bring, it's a much easier discussion, because you don't feel that intimidated anymore, because I do not have to discuss with them that they have more experience. This will always stay the same way. I cannot somehow compensate 30 years of experience, but I can bring other things to the table. And I think this is important for everyone to consider.
I agree 100%. Having that perspective.
Very powerful.
Yeah. It's the perspective that really brings it home, because these people with 30 years experience very likely have very similar 30 years of experience, but you with your fresh experiences coming from in software development, I often find that folks like companies that do really well, or teams that do really well, value the different perspectives from teammates that
Mm.
have other backgrounds. So if career changers, for example, who have, I don't know, 10 years of experience in, I don't know, theater or something, they bring that into the team. They have that value add that, the other team, who are a bunch of graduates of software development, don't have, and they,
Yeah.
these skills complement each other. So it's really, I think it's really important to bear in mind. So thank you for bringing that, out for um, our listeners. Now that you've been doing this for a while, I'd love to hear, how can I phrase this? Um, how has the landscape changed for you? Is it in a way that you expected? Does it look better? Does it look the same? What can we do to perhaps expedite that?
I mean, what I realized over the last years is that there are actually a lot of networks and initiatives already working on diversity in tech. And it feels like a big community. So once you get into this, you meet more and more, yes, more and more people who are supporting you on the way and who are also active in that way. So that was really fascinating for me, and also empowering, because you see that you're really not alone and there are a lot of people already working on that. Sometimes, however, I think this can make you feel like a lot already changed for the better. But when you step outside of that bubble, you actually see that, well, there are still a lot of things to do. And actually, in March, around the International Women's Day, I read an article of a man who said, I think what we can bring to the table as men is to stand up for the women in our environments, like be it at work or in private life, and to really call out their successes when they're not in the room, bring them to the table, promote them for a new job, bring them into the discussion. And I think whether be it like a man or not, I think we can all do this. And this is for me also the beauty of the new IT girls. Like, I helped so many women already, and even if it was just in a small way, but I think if everyone just does that one step to help another human being in a way that they can help, already brings us a lot further. And especially, I think this allyship between men and women is super important when it comes to gender equality. It's not about now women have to rule the world, but it's really about how we can be better together. And I think everyone can contribute. But yeah, a lot has changed, but still, I think a long, long way to go, and we can do small steps every day.
I really love this concept of like having it be cumulative between a lot of people, because I think that's the best way that we can enact big change. Big change comes from group activity. And I also really appreciate the advice for men like myself, to use our platform for good, essentially, given that we are privileged to have this enabled big platform, to use it to amplify the voices of those who are underrepresented and allow
Yeah.
them to be heard. I think it's hard. I'm not like, if for some people like myself, I know that sometimes I get, when things get a little, let's say, when things get a little bit difficult, and I have to use my platform to call out, or to criticize, or to amplify the criticisms of my peers who are being harmed. It's hard, and
Mm.
it's a skill. It's a muscle you have to train, and it's okay. It's okay. Like, we
Yeah.
all do what we can. Yeah, sorry.
Exactly. And I mean, I think that everyone, like, is different. It's like people working on sustainability and climate change. There are some who say like, now everyone has to become vegan, and that's one way we could do it. Or the other ways, everyone does something in his or her range that is possible for this person. And I think this also contributes to a change over time. And for me, also the new IT girls, it's really about working on a positive change for society when it comes to women in IT, because I'm vocal. Like, I don't have a problem speaking up, and I want to use my voice for others that are maybe not heard, or maybe are not don't feel that confident to speak up for themselves. So I think if we're all allies for others, and I feel maybe more comfortable to speak up for someone else actually than speaking up for myself, because sometimes it's easier to tell other people how they could do it or help others than helping yourself. So I think in a community, if everyone gives this push to another person, then at the end we're in a circle again, and everyone got helped and got further than they were before. So
I love that. I love that. I think
Me
this
too.
this communal approach is vital.
And I like that you brought up the topic of allyship. Um, I hear it popping up more and more, and I love the momentum. So
yes.
I'm thinking about some ideas, maybe a workshop, maybe doing something together. But yeah, let's see.
Well, I think
Absolutely.
it's really a topic that is coming up more and more, and the reason I'm actually familiar with it is also because, for example, at Microsoft, we have regular trainings around diversity and inclusion, and one is about allyship. So how can you
Wow.
be an ally not only for women, but in general for other underrepresented groups at Microsoft? So how can you, like, how do you even behave correctly, because it's not your task to defend everyone if they don't want to feel defended, but being an ally actually means to, in the best case, ask the people before, would you feel okay if I'm your ally, and then speak up for them when it comes to that. And another topic that we're discussing a lot is unconscious bias, which I think, especially when it comes to gender equality, is something that a lot of people still underestimate. So I hope that this will also become very mainstream in the next couple of months or maybe years, that everyone knows what it is and how to actively work against it, because we all have it and no one can do anything about it. The reason, or the question is, how do I react to it? So if I want to hire a person and I feel that, well, but this person who is male and 35 and comes in a suit would fit much better into the team, then I could stop and reflect and think, okay, is it maybe because all the others I hired do look exactly that way? And this is why subconsciously I feel that this person would fit into the team? Or is it really because this person has the right qualification that I'm looking for? And yeah, I think there's a lot that we can still do, and it's really something where everyone can work on every day.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that pinpointing of it, because I think that uh, I find allyship such an interesting topic, because not only is it applicable across so many walks of life. For example, myself as a white man, I can be an ally to women, but for example, white women can be an ally to black women. And
Mm.
going into that, I'm reminded of something told to me by Kim Creighton, who runs this organization called the Anti-Racist Economist. And she said something that really, first of all, I what I love about her work is that it's such good education, and it always makes me uncomfortable in a good way, because I think being uncomfortable, as we've said several times on this podcast, helps us grow
Yeah.
as human beings. And she said, "You are not my ally unless I say so."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What?" That is profound, because it's very easy to just put the badge on yourself and say, I am an ally, and then go around causing harm. But to actually be, be given that position where you are told the work you are doing minimizes harm and you are an ally, that requires a lot of introspection as well, I find, to be able to be, like you said, receptive to what people are saying. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that quote because actually that was not something I knew before I did this training.
Yeah.
Because you think, well, I'm just doing something good for someone else. But how, like, what gives me the right to decide what is right for you without asking you? So also that was for me like, okay, wow, I've never thought about it that way. So yeah, first of all, you have to tell me that I should be your support and I should be your ally, and then I can act that way. So it was really also a lot, yeah, of thinking for myself. And I
Yeah.
like what you said. It first, like, it should make you feel uncomfortable or maybe even react like in a very strong way. And
Yeah.
for me, I really learned that whenever I react or I think like, but that is stupid, and then I reflect, it's actually because I feel like, oh yeah, maybe I haven't considered it yet and I learned something new.
It's kind of like a washing over of the unconscious bias. That unconscious bias is being challenged, and this is an ongoing process, probably even lifelong, generation long, who knows. um
Yes.
Fascinating stuff.
Thank
Well,
you
as
very much for both of you to let me sit in on this wonderful conversation. I think I definitely just learned some points there, um, especially about allyship. I want to follow. Let's put in the show notes your reference, Ramon. I want to look into that because I really want to learn more about allyship. And I find it absolutely great that you let us in to how is diversity and inclusion lived at Microsoft, how it affected you, how you think now as a person, how you drive this inside the community in the New IT Girls. It's like, thank you very much for sharing and for being on the podcast with us on that matter.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And I'd really like to jump on with Doris and keep on talking about the New IT Girls. Thank you very much today.
yeah,
Thank you.
before we go, if I may, I would love to give you the opportunity to recommend any kind of resources or give a shout out to an organization that you would love to do, something for our listeners
Mhm.
to also take away in the form of a resource.
Um,
You have one, of course.
I think what I really liked, although it is discussed controversially as well, but I really liked the book Lean In,
Mhm.
if you know it. There were a lot of things that I could take away, other things that I don't agree with, but I think that's okay as well. You don't have to agree with everything, but at least you can make you think. And I think this taking your right to sit at the table was one of the things that I took away from it, where I was like, yes, I mean, why do I wait for someone else to invite me? I can invite myself as well and be there and speak up for myself or the community I'm in. So that's maybe a good read or audio listening for the
Yes,
listener.
thank you. Indeed, it hasn't been mentioned yet, the book, probably because of the controversy. But as everything out there, you have to take it into your own prism. And Sheryl Sandberg, well, she brought up this point, and it was a controversy, but at least we talked about it, right?
Exactly.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Cool. Well, last point, Astrid, if folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do so?
Definitely LinkedIn. So
Mhm.
feel free to send me a message. If possible, and you add me as a contact, it would be great to mention where we met or how you heard from me, because I get a lot of contact requests and sometimes I'm like, did I meet this person somewhere and I forgot? So this would be super helpful, but I'm so happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. Also stay in touch, innovate. Yes, Ramon.
No, no, I'm very sorry. I just realized I'm guilty of adding you without a message. I'm very sorry.
But we were in contact before, so I knew that. No worries. No, but sometimes after, because also at the New IT Girls meetups, we always do the shout out that people should connect with us, because this is the whole idea of a community. It's not just the meetups once a month, but it's actually about staying in touch longer and on a more regular basis. So I love if people add me. It's just sometimes then I'm wondering where did I meet this person or how? So yeah.
So
Okay.
Be conscientious of that, folks. Astrid, once again, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you
Thanks.
for having me.
Nice to meet you and having you on the podcast.
Thank you.
See you next time, folks.
Bye.
Bye. Are you on the forefront of gender equality? You are invited to our podcast.
That's right. Or maybe you know somebody that we can have a chat with. We'd love to have you on.
Subscribe to us on YouTube not to miss an episode. And also follow us on Twitter at Gender Coffee and on your favorite podcatcher.
And hey, if you like what you're listening to, please throw us a review or give us a like. Thank you.